Hi, this is Mark. Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to dive a little bit into personal finance. I'll give you a brief glimpse into how I look at credit, why and how I use it, and a couple of tips that you can use in order to improve your credit and use credit like I do if that's what you're inclined to do. Before we get started, if you could hit the subscribe button, it would really mean a lot to me, and let's get started. Now, the first rule of finance is that money now is worth more than money later. Or, as Wimpy would put it, I would gladly pay you on Tuesday for a hamburger today. Now, what does that mean? Well, let's unpack. If you give me $1 today and I give you back $1 a year from now, in that year, I can invest it. And if I give it to you 30 years from now, then I can invest it at higher growth. So I can always get a rate of return that's greater than zero. So $1 now can be invested and given back at some time in the future at more than $1. So let me give you a couple of real-world examples from my recent past. I recently bought an exercise bicycle for my home, and I had an opportunity where I could either pay cash for it right now, either by credit card or by check, presumably online, so it's going to be by credit card. And I have the money on the credit card, that's no problem. I have the money in the bank to pay off the credit card, that's also no problem. Or I could get 39 months, 0% APR, no interest, and $66 a month. So why wouldn't I do that? Well, no reason. The only downside is that I won't get the points from my credit card, and I'll go into that more later, but it's 0% interest. I get to pay it off over the next 39 months. So it's a great deal. This is actually win-win for me and for the retailer. They make a sale that maybe they wouldn't have made. They don't know me, so they're willing to offer that because they have to offer it to everybody, even though they might not need it. But I certainly took it, and I get to pay over time. Instead of being out $2,000 now, I'm out $66 a month over the next 39 months. Now, there's another example. I recently put a new air conditioning unit into one of my properties, and my HVAC person has a deal with a major bank where they offer 18 months, same as cash. With low payments, it's about 3% a month. So you pay 3% a month for 18 months, and then you got a bigger payment at the end. So for me, it ends up being about $267 a month, and then at the end, I owe about $3,000 or so. So this is a good deal for the vendor because they can make more sales. But is it really a win-win for me and the bank? Well, no, it's not. It's win-lose for somebody. And the question is who? Well, the answer is, why does the bank do this? It's because if you read the fine print, yes, it's 0% APR, 0% interest for 18 months if and only if you pay off the full balance by that 18th month. However, if you just make your minimum payments, the minimum payments that they require, you will not pay it off in the 18 months. You will still owe, like I said, about $3,000. So what happens if you don't pay off that last $3,000 payment? Well, it turns out that it's 28% interest for every month on the whole balance. So that you end up paying a whole lot of interest. I've already done this once with this bank, and guess what? I didn't pay the interest. I paid the monthly payment, and then at the end, I paid off the whole rest of the balance, which is again about $3,000. So that was win for me, lose for the bank. Now, if I don't pay off the balance and I pay 28% interest, that's win for the bank and lose for me. So I promise you this time, again, it's going to be win for me and lose for the bank because I'm not going to pay 28% interest. I'm going to pay 0% interest, and then I'll just pay off the balance at the end. So why do I use credit? Well, one, it gives me flexibility. If you go to the bank and you take out a credit card and you make purchases throughout the month and then you pay off the whole balance at the end of the month, you've gotten a 0% interest from the bank for 30 days. That's great. I love 0% interest. Now they're counting, like the bank in my previous example, that you're not going to do that. That you're going to run a balance and you're going to pay 12, 15, 18, 20% interest on the balance. I don't do that. Also, it gives me flexibility and I don't have to carry cash. Cash can be lost. If my credit card is lost, then it's not my problem. I immediately go to the bank and I get it canceled. And if there are any charges on there that I didn't make that are fraud, they have to pay it. I don't pay it. So that gives me a big advantage in terms of risk tolerance. I can't lose money on my credit card, but if I lose cash, it's just gone. The other thing is that I'm at the point now where I use my credit card for points. You can get various credit cards depending on what your situation is, how you use your credit card, what your personal life is in terms of getting miles on airlines that you might fly, points at hotels where you might stay, cash back on certain purchases, cash back on different types of purchases, be it groceries or gas or all of your purchases. Or what I do is I just take points and then I can use those points however I want for cash back, or in my case, I use it for airline purchases across any airline that I want. I'm not tied to any specific airline. And so that's just a free bonus for me. I use my credit card for absolutely everything that I can. For gas, for groceries, for clothing, for electronics, for my cell phone bill, for my cable and phone bill, anything that I can. The final reason why I use credit is simple emotional comfort. I don't have to worry about whether I have enough money with me to pay the bill when we go out. When we travel internationally, I actually get worried about that. It reminds me of those nightmares when you're in high school and you show up late for the final exam. I don't know how much money to take out in countries where it's a cash society and they don't take credit cards. So it got to the point where I would actually just take all the money that I had. However much money I had transferred from American dollars into local currency, I would just take all of it, and that solved the problem. But it was an uncomfortable time for me. You might have one question. In those cases, all of the vendors, the retailers, the cell phone, the grocery store, they pay the 3% surcharge to the credit card company. There are some instances, for example, property taxes, where you can pay on your credit card, but they, of course, don't want to pay the 3%. So do I pay the 3% and put it on the credit card? No, I don't. I thought about it, but for me, I'd rather save the 3% than get the points. It's just not worth it to me. Okay, so I don't know what your credit situation is, but I'll give you a brief tutorial on credit and how you can start credit and what you need to watch out for. You've probably heard of your FICO score, your credit score, and a lot of people who give credit now simply ask, what's your credit score? You can get one free credit report from each of the 3 credit reporting agencies once a year. So you can get one free credit report every 4 months. And I recommend that you do it and check with each agency and make sure that your report is correct, because they are required to change or remove any erroneous entries in your report. Anything that's wrong or is not complete, they have to fix it. I subscribed to a free service called Credit Karma, which sends me updates about once a month where I can get my credit score from them for free. And I love it. So what goes into your credit score? Well, by far the most important factor is your payment history. Do you pay your credit bills on time? So a 30-day late, a 60-day late, and paying 90 days late, all those are progressively worse. A bankruptcy is even worse. A foreclosure is also even worse. The number one factor is, do you pay your bills and do you pay them on time? So all I can recommend is that when the credit card statement comes, you pay it. Even if you could only pay the minimum, pay something. At least pay the minimum. Ideally, you want to pay it off in full because then you won't pay the exorbitant credit card interest rates, but don't not pay it. Pay something. Another factor is what they call credit utilization. In other words, how much of your credit are you using? Let's say you've got a $1,000 credit limit on your credit card and you've got $100 on it. You're using 10% of your credit. Let's say you got a $1,000 credit card and you've got $1,000 on it. You're using 100% of it. They like to see less. It's not a huge factor. It's not as big as your payment history, but it does matter. And I'll explain how to get around that in a few minutes. Another factor is how old your credit accounts are. The bankers like it to be older. So all these things are really just how you use credit, how much of your credit you're using, and especially how regularly and on time you make your payments. Okay, so I'm not sure what your credit situation is. If you have credit, you don't have credit, it's good or bad, but I'll give you a couple of ways to get started. The first thing you can do is you can go to a bank and you can set up what's called a secured credit card. In that, you put money in the bank, and however much money you put in the bank, that's how much credit you can get, and you get a card to do that. That way, if you don't pay the credit card, the bank knows they can just take the money out of your bank account. And you can start with that, and after you've built up the credit that way, you can get rid of the secured card and go to a regular card. Now, I mentioned I would talk to you about how to handle the credit utilization issue. And the issue is simply that you just increase your credit line. So once you've built up your credit with the secured credit card, I recommend that you ask your lender for a credit line increase. The worst that can happen is that they can say no. You can ask for however much you want and they'll give you whatever they feel makes sense, but it won't hurt to ask, and a lot of times you'll get the amount that you want, and that way you're not using as much of your credit as you were before. So like in the example I said before, if you have a $1,000 credit line and you're using 1,000 of it, then you're using 100%. But if you increase that to 10,000, then all of a sudden you're only using 10% and your FICO score will go up. Now, in terms of the age of your credit accounts, I recommend that you don't close your accounts, especially the first ones that you get. Even if you don't plan to use the card anymore, just use it once a year or so, buy some gas or some groceries. That way the bank won't close it for inactivity, because if you never use it, the bank may very well close it. That will reduce the overall age of your credit accounts because you're closing one of your oldest accounts. I actually had this problem. I closed a HELOC and it had been open for quite a while. I really needed to do it anyway because the bank wouldn't let me keep their second loan when I was getting a new first loan. It was just taking too long, so I had to close it. But for a little while, it did hurt my credit score because I was closing a very old account. This is Mark. Thank you for watching. If you haven't already hit the subscribe button, please do that. And if you have any comments or questions or ideas for future videos, please leave those down below in the comments. And I'll see you next time. Thank you.